We heard about another fellow who was using the same technique to restore grasslands, bioremediate, he called it, to reclaim, is another word that I've used back in Ohio dealing with strip mines, to reclaim copper mine tailings that they pile in the vicinity of these large copper mines that are around the west. This is a tailings pile near Globe, Arizona. It's set up in 50-foot benches. It's 300 feet high, and at the time this was taken, it covered about 1,100 acres. This is what you see here is rock dust that's crushed to the consistency of talcum powder, and then it's treated with chemicals to remove the copper and some other metals that they're using the mine to extract here, and then the waste is pumped in a pipe out onto this pile that has a sort of a dike around the edge, and it fills up with this stuff kind of like Jell-O, and dries out over time. And nothing, well, you can see how much is growing on it. This has been here quite a while. Actually, parts of this have been reclaimed again, and the grass, they got grass to grow on it, but the erosion that you see here washed all the grass off and piled it up at the bottom. It looked like, I have other photos of it showing sort of piles of turf and sod that are rolled up at the bottom of this pile. They couldn't get the grass to grow on it and stay there. This is again, cows being used on the same pile of tailings. The formula is the same. They put down seeds, they put out hay, and the hay, they put more hay than the cattle can eat because they want the cattle to tromp this into the tailings. Those tailings have been treated. The solution that they use contains cyanide, so they're totally sterile. So they have to get this organic. They have to make it organic, and they have to bring it back to life. They have to resuscitate this rock dust, which is really the parent material for all soil, and do soil building. You hear that it takes 1,000 years to make an inch of soil, and what you're looking at here is they've done soil trenches in this. These cows are making a foot of soil in about 14 days. That's a whole lot faster than an inch in 1,000. There's the results of what the cattle did. This was done probably about 12 or 13 years ago now, and I drive by here every now and then, and every now and then I see cattle back on there as they keep the cattle on. Not only have the cattle created this grassland, but they have realized that they need cattle to sustain it. And occasionally they'll get a big rain and it'll start to wash a gully in this. They throw some hay down in the gully. The cows go down in the gully with the seeds that are spread there. They replant the seeds and heal the gully. And you can see off to the right, untreated land. Actually, that's land that had been re-slurried, and I'm not real sure why. But they retreated that with cattle and got the same result. So, we heard about areas where guys were using cows to make their ranch healthier and make it more productive. And we heard about where they went to see where they've been using cattle to restore grasses and ecosystem function to really damage land. Another thing we heard about was how not using the land, not having animals on it in this way that nature grazes her animals in herds and in pulses. A friend of mine came up with the idea that they were restoring a pulse to the land as the herds moved across the land. They were like pulsing. So here's an area here that we went to look at that had been, the U.S. Forest Service had tried to restore in a different way. This area had been damaged as well. There had been a town here, a temporary town of railroad builders that had built a railroad through this area. The town had become a ghost town, and most of it had been torn down. And the Forest Service tried to figure, the land had really been used hard and was not terribly vital. And the Forest Service thought, what we can do here is we can use this as a study plot, and we can learn how to restore the land. One of the ways they wanted to try was the way everyone thought was the most effective way to restore damaged land, was let it return to nature. So what they did is they built a fence around this to keep all livestock off of it, and they didn't permit any other human use of this except as a study plot. This photo was taken, I think, in about 1984. Not in 1984, I'm sorry, in 2004. Got my decades missed. This photo was taken in 2004, I believe. But this land had been protected. This project had started. This land had been actually returned to nature in 1946. So for 60 years, this land had been allowed to heal according to and by the workings of nature, and you can see what it looks like. I mean, how healed does it look? I asked Al Medina, the scientist who's in charge of this place. I said, "Well, what did it look like in '46?" He said, "Well, it looked just about like this, according to the photos that they have, but the trees were smaller. But it was just about this barren." So here we are there with a 6-6 group meeting on this piece of land, and here is the land outside the fence that has been grazed by the local rancher here, the Barhart Ranch. This is the land just outside the fence. This has been grazed continuously since right on through 1946, since before that, and it, according to Al Medina, it looked like the land inside the enclosure looks today, back in 1946, but this is what it looks now. And what I've done here is this same ranch, we've worked with this rancher to restore other land, other damaged land on their ranch, and actually got some grants to do some work to restore some gullies and some land that eroded. And what I'm going to show you next is land where, see, this land has not been actively restored, it's just been used. And just being used, it's healthier than the land that has been restored by preservation or by rest or by leaving the land alone. And this is one of the things, as an environmentalist, I'm looking at this, I'm blown away. I mean, so far as I'm concerned, the way you heal all land is you leave it alone. And when you preserve it, you make it wilderness. I had made a bunch of this land around here wilderness that made it, didn't preclude grazing on it, but it made it much more difficult. One had to graze, we couldn't use machines, that sort of thing. But anyway, here is what the land looked like that we did a restoration on. There's a gully out there. It's a little hard to see. You can maybe see a little bit of a dent in there. And we had used cattle in the same way that the Tiptons had used it on the gold mine in Nevada, and the same way that Terry Wheeler, I forgot to mention Terry, he's the fellow that came up with the idea of using cattle to restore mine tailings piles. We did the same thing here. We spread seeds. We put hay out on the land, and we did this in the middle of one of the deepest droughts that's ever been recorded in Arizona. One of the things that we had is we put a lot of hay out there, but the cows were so hungry they ate it all. But it's still, as you can see, the restoration, did the land some good. Those are all, those are almost all. There's probably a few non-natives in there, but those are almost all native grasses as well. And this is on the same ranch as the exclosure that I showed you a few slides back. I just put a couple of these together for comparison. On the one, you see the results of restoration done using the paradigm that the way to heal the land is to return it to nature, to rest it, to preserve it, to leave it alone, to get the humans off, to reduce human impact, ideally to zero. And on the other side, you see what we're able to achieve by taking a lesson from nature and bringing nature's healers, nature's pulse onto the land. We seeded it, we brought the cattle back, we grazed them there, we brought on some hay for them to eat. Normally, what nature would do to bring hay onto the land for its own animals, it would grow weeds here. They would come to eat the weeds, and then they would start this healing, this ecosystem process to bring it back to grassland. I started to collect these sorts of instances. Here's a reserve near Santa Barbara, actually near Santa Ynez, California, between Santa Ynez and Santa Barbara. And on the left side of this photo, you see an area that was set aside. It's a rather small area, about an acre, in order to protect the native grasses that grew on this ranch from invasion by non-native annual exotic grasses. So the left side, you'll notice it has sort of an orange cast to it. That's because inside the exclosure, where the grasses were protected from grazing, it has become almost a monoculture of non-native annuals. And the lady on the right is the scientist for that particular reserve who took me up here to show me this, and she's standing in a pure stand of native purple needlegrass, the state grass of California, and it continues to be grazed and it continues to thrive. So she said that, I couldn't believe it. I came here to chronicle how removing cattle from the land would make it more natural, and found out that it was just the opposite. Removing cattle made it less natural because it made it so that the natives could no longer survive and they succumbed to invasion.